Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here and be representing Canada, as well as talk about all things related to AI. My name is Humaira Malik. I am CEO and founder of Canvas AI. It's an industrial AI software company headquartered out of Toronto. But before I jump into talking about ourselves, I want to talk about a little bit about the history of AI here, because I found an interesting tidbit, and this is what ChatGPT and Bard does to you. Is every morning you get up and you ask what the day is about. So what interesting tidbit I learned is today is an important day in the history of AI. September 20th, 1956, it was the day when the first AI conference was held. So we're kind of reliving that. It was held in New Hampshire. We're reliving that in Austin today. But after all those years, today at least, AI is more practical, and it's actually embedded in our day-to-day lives. With that, before I jump into about myself and the company, you guys have heard enough this morning about Austin. Let me take you up north a little bit and talk a little bit about Canada. And by the way, remember, there are some direct flights now from here. So come visit us and you'll get to experience all of the things that I'm talking about from a tech perspective. So, Canada is not a leader in AI. We actually are the only ones in AI that have been the leader since AI got invented. So we're not one of the leaders, we are the leader. And that's because we actually invented AI. People talk about large language models. Even that came out of Canadian research about 20 years ago. We're the first country that introduced AI at a national level back in 2017. We're the very first country that has made commitment as well as invested billions of dollars behind that strategy. Today, we are one of the only countries that actually has got 45 national labs around that allow you to come in and build AI. We also have 3 of the largest institutions related to AI in Toronto, in Montreal, as well as in Alberta, where so far 1,500 graduates have come out, and they are further leveraging strong partnerships with partners like Google and Facebook to continuously invent AI. The things that you experience out there today, most of them somehow, there is a Canadian background attached to it. We also have a very robust infrastructure for startups. That's where people like me come in from. And that's because we have built certain infrastructure and programs that allow startups like us to come into existence and actually make our name on the big tech world. And that's because we have programs like Shred that allow you to gain tax incentives on all of the R&D work that you do. I actually myself went through a program in Canada when I was getting this company started through that accelerator program. And about 80% of the companies were coming from US into that program to leverage that kind of a program to their benefit. We also have invested over $1 billion into superclusters, where we create partnerships between companies like us and large behemoths of the tech out there actually to invent more AI-related technologies in different areas, manufacturing, oceans. You take it from the sky to the oceans. Everything that's being done is actually being supported by the infrastructure that we have built there. Some of the stats that some of you might be interested in. Canada has been a leader in many areas in G7 as well as G20. In G7, our growth rate last year in 2021, our growth rate in 2022 was 3.4%. That is one of the highest in the G7 countries. We also are a gateway into North American trade because we have about 15 trade agreements with 50 different countries that allow us the ability to bring in a lot of the trade from countries which usually don't have the possibility of working in North America. We also have one of very unique immigration strategies and a program, again, that allows people like me to come in and build companies like Canvas. Canada is right now committed to bringing in 500,000 immigrants into the country every year till 2025. And hence why you see this kind of growth patterns coming into Canada, especially in the tech sector. Majority of the people that we're bringing in are coming in into tech, manufacturing, healthcare sectors. One of the other unique things is actually the amount of jobs that we're creating in tech especially. In just Toronto, 89,000 jobs were created in 2021, and we expect a similar kind of trend going forward actually. The other unique thing which brings this kind of talent into the country is our universities. We have 4 of the top leading cities that have 4 of the top leading universities as well. And one interesting thing I found was out of every 4 grads, 1 grad is graduating in STEM technologies, so in the STEM sector. And that's really what is promoting this kind of a tech sector. So again, I invite you all to come and visit Canada. It is a country that would allow you to experience some really great weather, especially in winter. And it would also take you away from here and let you experience some of the thriving economy that I'm talking about. With that, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and what Canvas is. So Canadians are very good at solving hard problems, and that's what I went into doing with Canvas. Started the company about 6 years ago, and the reason was because I was seeing a lot of tech misleading this sector into investments that were not yielding any kind of ROI for them. So if you go in the industrial sector, it's a very traditional industry, very slow to change. But what they're very good at is they are very good at operationalizing their processes in a manner that can create efficiencies. But there was a lot of investment that was being made into the technology infrastructure, but no ROI was being driven. So I went in to solve a problem related to that. And now, 6 years later, where I've ended up is what Canvas AI is. We started off on a mission, and the mission really is how do we help the industrial operations to become more tech savvy and enter into the 21st century. The line I used to use at that time was, how do I move them from analog into the digital age? And with that, really, the idea was to address some of the most critical challenges that this industry is dealing with. One of the most critical ones, which I will show you some stats as well, is talent shortage. There aren't enough people to continue in this industry to continue with the kind of operations that we're running. So that leads into how do we create efficiencies? And then the other factor is this industry is one of the leading contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. If you look at the food and ag industry specifically, if some of you are coming from there, that industry generates enough gases that can actually build a country like China. And this is really where some of these core challenges were not being addressed, although a lot of investments were being made. And this is really, we went in to use technologies like AI. Now, why AI? AI because this industry is very good at hoarding data. And what technology would you use when you're looking at these large data sets? How do you solve problems with it? But they had no way of connecting data, people, and processes, and that's really where we played a role. So we're one of the only industrial software AI companies in this sector that actually has built AI, which is usable and accessible by plant operators, process engineers on the plant floor. Proudly backed by some of the leading investors, including Google, Yamaha, and some others. We have now got patented software in this area that allows us to continue to build the competitive advantage as well as build that same competitive advantage for our customers. And the approach we have really taken, which I will speak about, this whole presentation I wanted to actually share with you, is the ability to use the data not for hoarding purposes, but for the purposes of gaining benefit. Benefit for the people that have spent trillions of dollars now into building infrastructure for collecting this kind of data. So why industrial operations and why do we care so much about it? Because it's at that verge, it's so right, it's so primed for disruption. The industrial operators, the industrial operations and the operators are actually going through these kind of challenges every day. This is an industry that is primed for disruption because they're still sitting on legacy systems. If any of you have visited any of these plants, such as you take refineries or chemical industries, they're still living on assets. They're still living with assets that are 40 years old. I've actually met people that built those assets 40 to 45 years old, 45 years ago, and they're still operating the same way. These kind of aging assets, along with the kind of processes they run in certain industries, when you look at product inspections, it's still done with a naked eye. In certain industries, when they're actually, even in the automotive industry, when they're doing certain drive tests, they're still done with humans sitting in it, trying to listen into the certain noises, as well as doing drive tests for quality assessments. It further leads into we don't have enough humans to test all these things out, and we won't. There's a shortage of about 2.3 million people by 2030 in the manufacturing sector. Now, unless AI can start cloning people, we really don't see a way today to address that challenge. Talk about inefficiencies and waste. We are just catching on to and wrapping our arms around how to actually manage the gases that are being emitted by certain industries. Specifically, as I said, you take chemical industries or you take food and ag. And then now there's the global competition. As if we didn't have enough, the pandemic and the wars have further accelerated some of these global challenges that these companies were facing. With all of that, what they have been led to believe so far is data is the savior for them. The more data this industry can collect, and here's some proof point of that. Over $2 trillion is being spent in this industry for collecting data. And that really was the trigger for somebody like me to go in and try solving this problem is, so what? And because only 10% of that data is being used to drive any kind of value. Now, why is that? The perspective that I have, and we have taken on this, is because we're being led to believe that the industrial future is powered by as much data as you can collect, as much data as you can have. And we continuously fight that every day in our customers' operations. Because every time you go in and you look at those operations, what they're looking at is, how can the data solve my problem? Without looking at what is the problem that I'm trying to solve. And that's really the approach that we have taken into this. This data is not a means to an end. Data is a means, but that is not the end. The industrial guys, if you have seen some of the industrial stats, you have seen 80% of the projects fail and people are stuck in this pilot purgatory and nobody can move forward. It's because each one of them is still continuously looking for two things. How can the data solve my problem? And how can AI come in and solve my most complex problem? And this is really what is stopping this industry, and I'm sure others as well. I'm sure in other industries as well, there are some similar challenges. But in this industry, because all the other challenges that I showed you earlier, this has actually augmented the challenges for them, where it's so hard for them to move forward with leveraging their data to their advantage. And hence why we're working with this notion that this industry is being misled to believe that. We all know who those players are. We all know how important cloud is. We all know how important the infrastructure is for data collection. But then nobody questions there and asks, but so what? We have actually had many customers. One of the examples was we went into a very large oil and gas facility. And the customer had a $200 million contract with one of the leading providers of technology that was allowing them to have an infrastructure to collect the data. 3 years later, we went back only to find out they were still at the same place. They were spending that money to collect the data, but they had done nothing with it. But nobody gets fired for bringing in any of the big tech, as we know. I also believe that the hype with the cloud that has been created is also not helping this market. because you can put all of that data there, but it's still not owned and controlled by the people that need access to it. Because I like telling customer stories. One of the early days when we were actually working with a customer, they were doing their welding inspections with humans in the loop, which is a weld comes out. There were 300 guys standing there in the line trying to do those kind of inspections. And when you challenge any of that, they wanted to spend about 2 years to collect that data. And those are the kind of things which does not allow this industry to move forward because they're very resistant to change. Now, but that's the fun part working about this, because this is really where some of the innovative tech and AI comes into play. What's really not working is, as I said, there's an abundance of data in manufacturing. Just the chemical industry today generates 5 terabytes of data a day. If you look at the depth and the breadth of the kind of data that's coming in, it could be made so useful that you can start to optimize about 40% of those operations just with the power of data. But it's so hard to move them to the path of how they start to drive value from that data, because they're made to believe that more data you collect, the more value you're getting from it. So the recipe for success really for us has been in those kind of industries is you start identifying small business challenges. You start identifying where is it where you can start to build small efficiencies with the data you have. On an average, we have seen our customers build an efficiency of 7 to 9 days on a per person basis where they start to connect AI with their data. The other thing that we've also seen is everybody looks for maximizing the impact when it comes to attaching AI with their data, because they think it's a magic wand and it's going to come in and solve that problem. But what it really takes, and I'll speak about a couple of the examples as well, what it really takes, it takes a village to make any of these kind of projects successful. Because it doesn't mean, we heard earlier about some of the models. It's not that the models are bad. It's about how this industry addresses to change. So it really takes a village, just because data is one component of success with AI. You have to bring everybody along, all of the things that you see here. People, process, data, and not just an executive in the boardroom that says, we should implement AI. And more recently, I haven't named the word, but I will. We should implement generative AI into our operations without even knowing what the benefit of that is. There doesn't go a day when I don't get a call from somebody saying, hey, what can generative AI do for us in our operations? So really, it's all about bringing the operations, the process engineers, the plant floor guys, everybody together, and then seeing what is the problem and start breaking down those problems into little components, and then looking at, okay, how do those components can be addressed with some Gen AI and some non-Gen AI. In some of the cases where we have seen people really want to go in is where then we start identifying. There are, obviously, these are data challenges that I'm talking about, but in certain components, Gen AI works better. When you're looking at design components, you want to look at any of the industries, pick aerospace. They go through so many design changes and design elements that can actually, Gen AI is the perfect fit for them. But when you look at predictive maintenance, maybe it's an overkill. And that's really where you have to identify what the problem is before you try to hone in and start to fit that with a technology, because you're just interested in bringing in that technology and you've invested so much into the data and you don't know what to do with it. Now, a little bit about us, really. How we've been able to address this challenge is working with customers first that were looking to move from analog to digital. They were actually open to change management in their environments. It wasn't necessarily an executive project that was being sponsored by somebody from the boardroom just to experiment with it. And then the other is really getting a commitment from them. Because the commitment is identifying a problem, being able to bring about the right set of people around it that would then be able to use this problem. The pilot purgatory exists because nobody knows how to operationalize AI in their operations. Everybody's still looking at it as an experiment. And in this industry, they're not very good with experiments because that means change. And this is really where you have to start with what is the change I'm looking to bring in my operations. So what we have been able to do is work with them to identify the problems and then use AI purposely for solving that problem at scale. What that means is really, if you pick any of the operations today, let's say you look at a customer that was looking at operationalizing their workforce because they were challenged with bringing in new folks to manage a blast furnace. When you look at a blast furnace, it's really like a volcano. And they have existed there forever, and it's an archaic technology, existed there forever. The one that we have, in certain places we have worked, they exist anywhere between 20 to 35 years. Now, how do you apply AI in that kind of an environment? Well, they have a certain recipe that they use. And when you start to look at that recipe, only the people that built it know how to use that recipe. How do you train the rest of the people on it is by converting that recipe into data components, that data that then AI can be trained on. And those are really the way we started to connect the dots and started to build these kind of prepackaged solution offerings, which mean you have a problem, here's a solution, and here's the kind of data that you need. You don't need all of the data that you've been collecting. The problem requires X kind of data for you to. So a couple of examples would be really very simple ones that I wanted to share was one of our customers, this is one of the world's largest food manufacturer. They were working with 3 different kind of control systems to control their cogen assets. And that's how they were producing energy in their plants. 3 different control systems, 3 different cogen assets meant they had 3 different teams working on them. All we did was actually applied a solution to bring consistency and applied AI so that they can bring the data together into one place and then apply the model so that they could optimize the running of these assets. And what that meant was instead of having 3 different teams, actually combined it together. They ran their first principles models and then AI models and the solutions they used to optimize these assets. They were not always being run at 100% capacity. Because otherwise, they were running 3 different systems at 100% capacity. That meant the remaining useful life of these assets was going to be cut by half if they continued running this way. But they actually started from a problem. They didn't start with the data. And that's really the difference what you would see between when you come in and you just throw AI platforms at a problem, they always start from the data. One of the recent ones actually was a customer in the oil and gas industry. They were actually spending 30% of their time, process engineers were spending 30% of their time with about 400 spreadsheets every month so that they could analyze the data and see how they could do different grading of their products. Now that's not very efficient use of these people's time who are already where we have 2.3 million of these jobs that are going to go vacant because we don't have these kind of people. So this is really where they used a prepackaged solution offering to do the analysis of that data and actually build solutions so they could know what grade of products they need to build. And these are some of the kind of very simple things that people are doing, but really it all starts from a data perspective. Now, it's really up to us to make those choices. All of you are probably making these kind of decisions on your data every day, not just from an industrial's perspective, but when you're asked to look at how do you bring in AI into your operations, it's up to you what choices you want to make, what path you want to take. Do you want to take a fully assembled success of business value or the cluttered maze of data first? My recommendation really would be is to make your choices wisely, because we have seen the repercussions of that where sometimes it's about not just the investments that you've lost, but actually the competitive advantage and the opportunity that you had in your hands. Thank you.